Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Mark Cohen, and I'm here with John Kierkegaard. And today we're here to talk about the engineered supply chain solutions that every company needs to know. Now, COVID-19 has really exposed some vulnerabilities of today's supply chains, given the volatile conditions that COVID-19 has created, and in general, volatile business conditions. A lot of supply chains have really evolved. And the result has been more like a Rube Goldberg experiment where you have a lot of complexity and not a lot of results. But what's really needed in your supply chain is a much simpler solution, more like an arch, a very simple, elegant engineering device that solves the problem quickly and efficiently. So what are some of when I talk about the Rube Goldberg, what are some of the examples? For example, simple low, the pursuit of the low labor cost is really not the answer that we're looking for. The long lead times that have resulted from chasing the low labor cost it's not agile, it's not sustainable, it's not something that can continue. All of our customers want something they can buy easily. The matching of supply and demand often has never been really more important. And that's really the sales and operations planning concepts that we're going to talk about a little later. In the post-COVID world, transportation takes on a new role. It's not simply moving items from A to B. It's not trying to minimize your cost through maximizing cube or maximizing weight or utilization. It's really much more to it than that, and there are more techniques you can use to leverage your transportation network. There's a lot of risk in our supply chains, and by engineering the supply chain, you can really mitigate a lot of that risk. And also, single sourcing has become very popular with trying to drive costs down, either through a single source to get your lowest cost or single source country. Then when there's an issue with that country or an issue with the port, you're stuck holding the bag. Finally, the big thing we're trying to get to is how can you best manage your working capital around the risk with uncertainty.
Thanks, Mark. We've all had various experiences in business using supply chains to drive a business. And unfortunately, my experience, especially my experience running DCRA in the last 20 years, is that there's been more distractions than solutions the last 20 years. And some of this is bared out in quantitative analytics that have been assembled by our team and by key analysts in the industry. One of them is if you look at the global business GDP, it's around $54 trillion, and the buffers between businesses runs around $13 trillion, and that's been very stable for the last 5-10 years. You would think with all of the marvelous technology that has been created that those buffers would largely have been reduced. Inventory turns would be much better. Some of us were working these problems in the mid-late 90s with companies like Dell turning 60 inventory turns. But if you look at the overall calculation of global GDP and inventory buffers, it's around 4 inventory turns. So something's not right. And the way we explain it is that a few key players by industry, which I can kind of highlight here a little bit, a few key players by industry have taken this capability and used it for huge competitive advantage, almost like arbitraging bullies of the supply chain. And then there's always some firms that get taken over by private equity that aren't calling it supply chain. They just crush the working capital out of the business and drive cash flow. But the sad part is the 90% of the business in the middle, I think, have largely missed this opportunity to use a sales and operations planning thinking to synchronize demand and supply, to shape their business around the engineered supply chain. They've largely missed out on the opportunities to use this for huge competitive advantage. So now we get to a bit of humor, which is always fun. I've personally lived through watching, being part of boards and watching events where folks have come in and sincerely pitched all of these things over the last 20 years as magic answers to the supply chain value proposition, almost like they were Wharton professors and high-level professors of finance, and an RFID tag was going to save the world and solve supply chain. Or if everybody picked up and licensed the same ERP vendor, the exact same vendor, installed it differently in 82 different places up and down the supply chain, that the supply chain would be automatically synchronized. And one of my favorite is sales and operations planning is just a great term that gets into helping a company build a culture. Can I make what I sell, and can I sell what I make, and synchronize that demand and supply? But along comes software vendors that want to create a proprietary version of it and call the next generation integrated business planning, which distorts the purpose, to confuses it, and makes it harder to deploy. So in many respects, the simple solutions that we've needed for the COVID-19 crisis, where all of a sudden you have demand supply shocks, you have sourcing shocks, the simple solutions haven't been really worked on, while most and all of clients have been distracted by these solutions that really probably shouldn't have happened. So what should they have been working on? We've been working on for the last few decades, with several patents and several clients and different approaches to technology, and that basic concept is matching demand and supply, and creating a culture that matches demand and supply as vigilantly as possible. And that doesn't mean some one-button software solution where I install it in the cloud and everybody learns to do everything based on what some software vendor says. It really is your culture of making things, but getting the demand side and getting the supply side to talk. And they don't talk about what TV show was on last night. They talk about, I need 10 a week for 10 weeks. No, and they might hear, oh, you need 100 in week 10. No, what you really said is, I need 10 a week for 10 weeks. So the communication has to be quantitative, it has to be specific, it has to be precise, and it has to have lead times involved in it. And there's basic algorithms to do that. There's basic data. But once that is set in place, everything happens. You increase sales because you can adapt to customer needs. The margin increases, or at least the margin of the algebra of the volume of products you sell times the margin goes up. You dramatically lower working capital. It doesn't take a genius to sit down and think about what Amazon and Walmart are doing so much these days. Is they aren't even stocking inventory. They're drop shipping inventory off their catalog from their supplier to you, which they have zero working capital involved. And the algebra of that, when they mix that with things they do stock, is that raises their overall inventory turns and working capital per unit dramatically. You can do that yourself. And we'll talk about some techniques. And as you get better at balancing the lead time of demand and supply, all of a sudden you begin to use it for your competitive advantage. I mean, everybody has a mobile phone, and the really good vendors of mobile phones or handbags or mini products is they figured a way to introduce new products and end of life the old product before they bring the new product on stream. And that's not just turning it off your shopping cart. There's all sorts of things in your supply chain in terms of suppliers, components, inventory levels, production schedules that have to be synchronized. And those are the types of things that really create competitive advantage. Moreover, when you get this sales and operations planning perspective in place, it helps you deal with the drone of digitize everything today. And value is not created by digitize everything. Value is by creating value. And this thinking around sales and operations planning really helps you understand where your constraints are, where you need to digitize, and where you can win.
Great. John, thanks for laying out the problem for us so well. Now, what can we do here at DCRA for you? Well, first, what we'd like to propose is that we use S&OP thinking to engine out the long lead time exposure. And this is really a high value item that's fairly easy to implement. We'll talk about this in a little more detail later. Also, we want to enhance the collaborative supply chain network communication. And this is really not an EDI, it's not a panacea to fix all. We really want to try to implement a solution that works like your planners work, that work like the planners at your contract manufacturers or your suppliers work, to enhance this communication. And finally, we want to create and enhance the direct selling capability that you may have to go direct to your customers to avoid some of the middleman, such as Amazon. So you're not tying up your inventory and meeting their requirements that really aren't driving any value for you.
Next week, we want to talk about why we're different and why we need to be different. It's when DCRA was founded, we did not want to found a software company. We did not want to found a traditional management consulting company. We wanted to focus on creating solutions. But moreover, and as you have witnessed for the last decades, the integration of technology into the solution, into the right process, is how you create a sustainable solution. So based on our experience, we can guarantee you business opportunity. That means spend time with us, and based on our proven solutions approach that complements your existing assets, it complements your people, it makes them better, it complements your ERP system, it complements your freight forwarding relationships, your 3PL relationship, it complements your whatever supply chain planning or planning systems or Excel spreadsheet you use, we complement, make it better. That the ability to create value quickly. So our whole business is to focus on things that can help you create value quickly up in this quadrant. Large value, quick time to implement. There are things that are take more time to implement, but if you do, you want to have an extreme value around them. The second thing is our approach to do a diagnostic to understand how to use sales and operations planning thinking to minimize your risk of long lead times. And that long lead time is really a metaphor for you've got to balance demand, the lead time of demand, the lead time of supply. So second of all, because a lot of these technology tools haven't been available and still aren't available, we can make these available to you at a very low cost or even free as part of our consulting work. For example, one of my favorite is just a supply chain execution repository where we can persist many different versions of the same data so that the planner can look at different versions of data and timestamp the one that's correct, that's going to go and lock in and support a plan, and or even upgrade the plan data during the plan. So these capabilities are generic and can be persisted in your data warehouse and in your systems. So technologies that can again complement existing assets. Another great example, we have a patented real-time sales and operations planning solution we call Order Commitment, which uses your existing infrastructure and data to give you really a sales and operations planning or sales and operations execution view of what you can commit to a new order. And then a big one that's embedded into the naming of our business and our approach is dynamic cycle time reduction associates. I mean, we really do not believe in Harry Potter magic. We believe in technology that saves people time, saves enterprises time. In this case, really saves time between enterprises to collaborate up and down the supply chain to synchronize demand and supply. And that approach to technology we know always works. And we'd like to help you make that happen. So our first solution is really a diagnostic of your business with the purpose of helping you understand how good you can be quantitatively. I mean, we talked about those macro numbers of global GDP and inventory turns and buffers. Using some basic techniques that are complemented by the approaches we talked about, we can almost assure you that we can, in a matter of hours and days, point out very specific areas that you can create significant value. If you give us more time, we can document this information and quantify it, and even then manipulate that value proposition and releases of capability over time that match your culture and your approach. And we call this methodology total order fulfillment. And in today's world, we really would focus that on your long lead time supply chains, maybe out of China, out of Asia, places where you need to engineer that product, maybe use more of a postponed manufacturing approach, use the sales and operations planning bill of material or operational bill of material, planning bill of material to really understand how to manufacture and to distribute that creates business competitive advantage for you. The second area that Mark introduced is really the world of collaborating up and down your supply chain with technology is really very new. And unfortunately, over the last couple of decades, the approach to technology to support it has drifted off. If we talked about a branch in a tree and we could have gone two different directions, instead of going into the branch that was very collaborative and very request and promise and respected autonomous businesses, we've kind of drifted off into this authoritarian cloud model, where if everybody puts everything in a cloud and I control the cloud, I can tell all my suppliers and customers what to do. And for all of you that run a business, you pretty well understand that's not how it works. What you need to have is the ability to operate your business, but wake up and collaborate with the networks of various different contract manufacturers, suppliers, component suppliers, service providers, various customer commitments. And there's some very massive breakthroughs in supporting technologies that can complement what you have today. Many of those things that we've pioneered and patented, and we can show you those and talk about where they work and where they create value for your business. The third area we'd like to talk about as a very rapid time to market value proposition for most businesses is, instead of thinking about your business like Radio Shack did in 2000, about I have to buy big containers of components and I have to put them through 3 levels of warehouses in Asia, then put them on a boat, then put them in 4 levels of warehouses, and then move them to the store. Rigid supply chains that have to have certain lead times, have to go through certain facilities. There's the ability in almost any industry, in any business, whether it's consumer business or it's a industrial business, is to create much more of a process where I look at what customers need and I work from the customer consumer back to the source of supply. And in this case, there are turnkey solutions that have shopping carts and fulfillment and credit card processing and catalogs and search engine optimization built into those things that any business can, whether you're locked into distributor agreements or not, you can stand these up very quickly that make your products and your capabilities visible to anybody in a search engine, whether you sell directly to them or you push that demand into your distributors, or you create a separate sales channel, or in the case, what we've done with many of our clients is use time as a competitive weapon, where the same SKU has various different pricing based on the lead time. The longer the lead time, the better the price. So there's some very powerful things that we can do that, again, are very low cost, high impact, and drive solutions that deal with today's problems now and complement your existing solutions. So in summary, whether you engage with us or not, or whether you pick up in these concepts, all these concepts, or just one of them, the goal is not digitize everything. The goal is really, how do we use less working capital to accomplish more? How do we have faster fulfillment? How do we tune lead time to customer demands? How do we have dramatic increases in inventory turns? And that's a concept of inventory management been around for years. But think about the basic arithmetic. If I sold 10 items out of a warehouse I had to store for 2 months, and I complement that with 10 items I can sell directly drop ship from my supplier, all of a sudden my inventory turns are going to double. I don't care what they were, 6 are going to go to 12, because that second batch of items has no time sitting in the balance sheet in working capital state. That's very possible to do in almost any business, industrial or consumer business. And then there's the ability to vary the SKUs, to make your product catalog more adaptive, to be more of a solution manufacturer or a solution distributor or value distributor. And that means sales growth, margin growth, and intellectual capital protection. And that's what our goal is, and that's where we believe bringing these solutions that complement what you have today can help you catalyze and drive this in a very big way.
Excellent. So thanks, John. So to contact us, you can contact us via email at DCRAsolutions.com. We can provide some of the more detailed white papers that describe these solutions in much more detail with specific examples, or better yet, call us at 214 888-352-0868 to arrange a diagnostic. Thank you for your time and attention today, and stay safe.